So when balancing your mix, you probably want to put some things over to the left, some things to the right to get this kind of wider stereo field. Make things a little bit more interesting and more vibrant and crisp. But if you push some things over to the left and some things over to the right, sometimes you can end up with this uneven balance to your mix, like it's pulling you to one side or the other. Well, there is this really cool, neat trick that you can do with reverb to actually help bring a little bit of balance while still having that nice, lush stereo width. Let's check that out today. Hey, my name is Steve and welcome back to Command Shift New. We have a really cool, quick reverb trick to show you today that is used in mixing to help balance uneven frequencies in the left and the right channel. For example, if I have violins on one side and cellos on the other side, the frequency response is a little bit different in either of them. You've got the violins kind of bright on say the left speaker, and on the right speaker you've got this darker, lower down sound in the cellos. So this might bring a little bit of a sense of unbalance as you've got like this low anchor kind of pulling you towards the right, towards the cellos, and this bright airiness coming from the left. So let's see how we can balance that out a little bit. I'll be doing this in Logic Pro, but you can do it in any DAW. So let's dive in and check it out. Okay, first of all, if we look at this session, it's a very simple makeup. It's just some quantized MIDI notes here that I've just quickly thrown in of a typical kind of like ostinato feel. Let's have a listen. By no means winning any awards, but that's just a simple example of we got some cellos and some violins playing an ostinato together. Now, of course, in a mix scenario, you've probably got a lot more instruments, but it's just easier to kind of visualize with just these two instruments for now what we want to do today. Now, at the moment, if you are listening to this through some headphones, which I definitely recommend, then you can kind of hear that the violins are already feeling towards the left and the cellos towards the right. And that's because they naturally, in a string orchestra, would sit in that sort of formation. You have violins first and seconds to your left, violas in the middle, cellos to the right, and basses at the back of the cellos. A lot of the time when we're mixing music, we want to achieve that same sort of image. Arguably, some basses sometimes get moved to the middle of the mix just to give that bass center to your mix, but that's another topic for another video for another day. Right now though, I've got my violins towards the left and my cellos to the right, and if I wanted to, I could pan a little bit to the left and the right to give myself a little bit more width. I'm going to open up the mixer because the first thing I want to do is I actually want to right click on both of these pan knobs and turn them to stereo pan. There is a very good reason for that, and have a look above or below for a link to my stereo pan video that I released just recently explaining what the difference is here. But essentially this is going to give us a lot better sound when we start panning. Now if I pan my violins over to the left and I pan my cellos over to the right a little bit, we should get some more stereo width. Fantastic. So it's sounding very kind of wide, and if you're listening to this on headphones, very isolated. And that is the problem. It sounds a little bit too isolated, too disconnected. Now, when we're applying reverb to this sort of thing, the temptation is to just add reverb to the track or add it as a bus and just throw the reverb in. But what that will do is it will send the violins to a reverb channel, and the reverb will be present in the left side. But what we can actually do is cast a shadow to the other speaker to push some of the frequency energy over to that speaker and help balance it out. So with our violins on the left, we actually want our reverb to kind of splash over to the right. And we might divide up and have several different reverb tracks for different purposes. So this would be one such purpose where we can throw some reverb to the side. Let's take a look. So on violins 1, I'm going to set up a send, and I'm going to send that to bus 1. And this send I'm just going to call verb_violins. And on here, I'm going to first of all throw an EQ. What I love to do, just as a pro tip, is I have an Abbey Road EQ curve set up, and this just kind of takes out some of the low-end muddiness that can impact your reverbs in a negative way, and the top-end energy that we just don't need. It's a great trick if you want to ever check it out, the Abbey Road trick. I should do a video on it sometime soon, but this is a great way of kind of cleaning up your mix. Now what I do is I throw on a reverb of some kind, and I'm going to look for a short reverb in this case. I have a great one by Valhalla, which is the plate reverb. And in here, I'm just going to choose a short or medium amount. Now, if I was to solo the violins for a moment and turn up this bus, we should hear some reverb coming through. It's a tiny reverb, it's not a huge reverb, it's just a little bit of a splash. It's 0.8 seconds of decay. This is a very short reverb time, and we use these short reverb times sometimes to create body. It makes the sound just feel like it's a little bit thicker, a little bit wider. The important thing is here though, that we're really only hearing it on the left side along with the violins. The violins and the reverb is really coming through on that left ear. Let's change that up and actually throw it to the other side. Two things we're going to need to do. First of all, we're going to need to grab our bus and just come to a different option and change it from post pan to post fader. What this means is that the volume control here will adjust the amount of volume that you get in the reverb, but it won't go through the pan knob. So it won't be pushing the sound over to the left. It'll actually be hitting this reverb completely evenly without any of that panning. That allows us to then use this pan knob to push it over to the right. And I might even change that one to stereo panning as well, because we're getting some stereo information coming. So I'll push that quite a way over so we can really hear the difference. As I turn it up there, you can probably really hear it. So you need to dial it in based on sort of preference, as it were. So the amount that you think that you're going to need for that section to blend it in with the cellos. But if I now do the same to the cellos, and we can then hear what it sounds like with and without the reverb, you'll hear how it kind of helps balance things out a little bit. So now I've got the same channel set up. It's a new bus 2, setting to this channel, verb_cello. And if we've soloed them up, here's what they sound like. So what does it sound like all together? Well, let's mute these two reverb tracks for a moment and we'll play just the violin and cellos, and then I'll add them back in on the second playthrough. So there I was pulling the volume down a little bit because of course it is a bit too far forward, for example, and just so that you could kind of hear what was going on. But you can balance this to your taste so that you provide a little bit of a shadowy image of what's on the left side into the right without it dominating the space too much. What you would then do is add a little bit of room reverb to the whole thing to glue it all together. So on both of these tracks, I'm going to create a third bus. I'm going to call this one verb_room. And we're going to throw on just our usual EQ trick. By the way, this EQ trick, if you have a reverb plugin that has EQ built into it, like some of the Valhalla ones, for example, that I've been using in this video, you can definitely just use those. You don't have to use this EQ, but I kind of like the process. It's kind of the way I'm stuck in working, I suppose. So I've just chosen a large hall type of sound, and now I'll just dial in the amount that I'd like. So I adjusted the volume there, and I brought back the decay a little bit just because it felt like the decay was going on a little bit too long. The reverb was lasting a little too long for my liking. But now let's have a listen to it without any of the reverb and then with the reverb to finish this off. And of course, it is entirely up to you what type of reverbs you use to match the right type of sound that you're using, how much you want of it, how wide you pan those things. It's all down to you. What I've shown you today is merely the concept behind it, but it is your choice on how you want to shape this. So there we go, a quick little useful reverb trick that hopefully brightens your day and brightens your next mix. You can of course subscribe and follow along for some more of these little production tips and lots of other stuff as well. You can check back over all of our past videos for any cool tips that you may have already missed. But otherwise though, thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.